Welcome everybody. Today is Sunday and we are going to London to Chelsea Design Centre at Artefacts, which is a new contemporary craft fair. And we're going to be hosted by Brian Kennedy. Brian was the instigator of Crafting a Difference. And you might remember that we toured that amazing exhibit when we were doing the Collect Art Fair tour, our first trip. And then again, we toured it and met some of the makers when we were doing the ceramic series. And we also visited Brian Kennedy and Peter Ting's apartment when we were doing Crafted Vancouver. And I know that Peter is behind the camera today and Brian is going to be our host and guide. We are visiting 5 galleries at the art fair today, and we put them in a very specific order, and we will be having 15 minutes with each gallery, discovering some of their artists that they are presenting today. You'll see that it's a very tight selection. It's a brand new fair, so you are actually probably the first one to have a live digital tour of the fair from North America, so it's a great privilege. So let me move the spotlight to Peter, as I always do. Hello, Peter, how are you?
Peter is fine. I think he knows the camera is on now.
Yeah. Fabulous. We can hear you, we can see you. It's perfect. So Peter, I think that some of the ladies in the audience haven't met you yet. So do you want to introduce yourself and then we can start our tour?
Yeah, okay. I'm Brian Kennedy and I'm an independent curator. And I have been working with Isabel on a few projects in the last while. And I'm delighted to welcome you all to Chelsea Harbour, the Design Centre. And they are hosting and running the first ever Artefact Fair. And it's a new contemporary fair, and Peter's going to scan it now from above. We're on a 3rd floor walkway, so we can see down into the fair. It's very small and very selective. There's only 15 galleries, and they've been invited rather than applied. And the Chelsea people have committed to 3 years. So this is the first of definitely 3 years, and they hope a lot longer of running the fair. They never wanted to be more than 20 galleries. They want to keep it small and select. And for the galleries, the advantage of here is that Chelsea Design Centre is the home of 150 design showrooms, textiles, carpets, fabrics. So a lot of decorators and their clients come here to actually look at textiles, fabrics, furniture, lighting, doorknobs, everything for new projects. So it's given us an automatic overlap into a different world of potential clients and potential selectors. It's the first event in London that's happened since the pandemic, so it's the first fair of any sort that has taken place. So we were all very nervous about how many people may attend, and we've had very nice numbers. It's never been too busy. As you can see, it's a really airy space, flooded with daylight, and there's a lot of space between the booths. So it's meant that it's actually a very safe environment and people really responded to that. And I think it's going to be a really important new event onto the kind of calendar. So sales have been good for most galleries. We've met new clients, which is always important, and some really potential interesting long-term kind of connections and collaborations are going to grow out of this. So, you know, it's always a risk, and it's always with trepidation on a first fair, whether it's going to be successful or not. But I think this really has been a successful fair so far. So you've got an overview of it, and we're going to now go down the staircase, and we're going to go through a bit of the design center so we can get an idea of the scale. As I say, there's 150 different workshops, everything from Sanderson, you know, all the big names of showrooms here. So you get an idea. It's over 4 buildings, so there's 3 atriums, and we're going down the central one, this lovely staircase. And then there's also an east dome, which is a more showrooms, and then there's another north area, which is opening up. So it's the biggest design center for the interior decorations in the world. So it's a really important kind of space. And pre-pandemic, you had a lot of people flying in from the States and from Europe to, interact with the different showrooms. So we're going to go down this staircase and bear with me for a while.
I always go and when I go to London, I always go and visit the design center, even if I don't need anything, because it is so inspiring and it's such an amazing place, and it's right on the bank of the Thames. So it's a fabulous location. It's really inspiring.
Now, because people are so much more careful about where they go. What's really great about this is there's underground car parking. It's really easy to access. The Financial Times subsidize and sponsor a restaurant. So there's a really lovely restaurant at the end of the fair. So it's a really kind of very intimate experience. And what the galleries have all enjoyed is because the flow of people hasn't been too strong, you have a lot of time to spend with clients and to talk about the work. So it's made for a very nice atmosphere, a very nice feeling. We're now going to enter into kind of more or less the middle of the fair. And we'll walk through and show you some of the other galleries we're not speaking to as we pass. Made in Brittany, you might have known from the exhibition I did, Crafting a Difference. He's one of the 5 galleries. And he's showing here. Also, Contemporary Applied Arts, which is one of the oldest organizations in the UK. It's a membership organization, and they have been around for over 90 years. So it's really nice seeing them here at the first fair. We have Ting Ying Gallery, which Peter is the owner of, behind the camera, and which I curated. And what's nice about the fair is there's 3 stands which are kind of in the middle of the space, and you just get the floor space basically and build your own. So it's given a very different rhythm to the whole fair. It's made a kind of a difference. This is one of the dealers you'll be talking to later on, Oxford Ceramics Gallery. And that was James, you saw briefly. We're working our way around to the first gallery, Ruup Form, and we meet Veruna. This is the Metal Collective, which is a group of 5 independent makers, all working in silver and metal. And they have worked as a collective. And then this is another person you probably have known, Cavalier Finn, who were also part of Crafting a Difference. And the nice thing about the whole fair is that all 15 galleries have had their own really distinctive voice. And here we are at our first port of call, and this is Veruna. And Veruna owns and runs Ruup Form, a very young gallery doing really exciting work. And Veruna is now going to take you through the art that she's showing.
Hello, Veruna, how are you? We can't, we can't hear you yet.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Is
can.
That good?
It's wonderful. Yes.
Awesome. I can. Can you? We're all good. Awesome. Sorry, this is the first time doing this, and Brian has gone far away from me, so we can still be audible without. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. I'm going to quickly run you through the works we are showing here at Artefact. First of all, it's so nice to be here at Artefact with all these amazing galleries. And just feel open and invited again in the space where it's a fantastic space to be in. It's open and it lends itself to the kind of work we're all showing. Ruup Form is a young gallery. We are about 2.5 years old. We focus on craft and applied art and design. For this particular event, we are showing 4 artists. There's Archana Pathak, who works with textile. Her works is around memory and displacement and finding new worlds. This series is called In Lure of New Worlds. It is each piece is her reimagined version of a world she would like to be a better world. For example, right now, Peter is at Core, which is about us relating to the earth and the earth being important to us. There's Collance, which is this particular piece that talks about coming together of people. The last year has been interesting in taking us out and putting us in bubbles. She's reimagining worlds where everyone comes together in calmness. It's a very meditative process. Her technique involves using shredded vintage maps and postcards. If you look closely enough, you will see little bubbles and these meditative prints that have been created. They're almost 3D, very calming, almost a very gentle approach to her work. Every stitch is laboriously used in areas that intend to have a dialogue. You can see in this particular piece, she's added many maps, and then she stitched them on to them, while still leaving a gentle, clean area here, which gives it a feeling of being in a world that is just open.
So Varuna, those are
Yes.
not necessarily maps that that represent places she's lived in. She's trying to connect all parts of the world. Is that correct?
She collects maps and vintage maps and postcards. Some of them have deep meanings to her. The others, she's just attracted to. You can see some of the maps here, which will have wordings. There's of course a little bit over here that has almost a sign of London coming through. They all have deep meaning to her, all these maps, and not necessarily places that she's lived in herself, but definitely she has strong connection to.
Mm-hmm.
They are quite 3D actually. They almost come out of the canvas. The reasons for putting them in these circular frames was to also a take on the world. So if you see a lot of the circular motifs repeat themselves in a lot of her works, and that also we wanted to take around with the framing, which was a conversation about the worlds. We want to take you next to Annette's work. Annette Mary Townsend works with beeswax, and so we're going to show you works that she's created over the lockdown. I'm going to especially open one for you. This series is called the Life Support series. It came out of the lockdown as we were only allowed little time away from our homes. And she lives right next to a reserve, and she was very thankful for the space that she had, the greenery, which was meditative and calming. We started having a conversation about what did people feel who live in cities, and where did they get that kind of solace for, which is why they sit on these steel bases, because nature comes through anything, comes through rubbles, they come through steel and in concrete jungles, and they stand in beauty and strength. So each one is a month. The snowdrops were for January of 2021. As I said, they're all created with beeswax. It's a very laborious process. She studied how to do this herself using old Victorian textbooks. And so she's the only artist we know who works with beeswax and creates these real lifelike pieces. The other day we had somebody come in and tell me that I needed to water them or they would die. That's how real they tend to look.
She showed a full garden at Collect 2 years ago, didn't she?
You're absolutely right. She was at Collect.
It was
Open.
mesmerizing. It was an incredible piece.
She does amazing work. The roots are probably my favorite, as they hold such strength and keep they have this feeling of being creatures, like they're going to get up and walk away. So I think the roots I find extremely enticing in her work. We're going to move on to Hannah Walters. Hannah Walters is also based in Cardiff, in Wales. She is a ceramist, and her works is interesting because it's all about juxtapose, whether it's materials or the information she's giving out. She has a sense of humor about it, which I find really interesting. This series has come out of a commission she got out of the National Trust building that she was working on. And the ceiling roses was her inspiration from this, again, a Victorian building. And as you can see, she's built, so this material is cranked clay, and that's porcelain. So there's a juxtapose of the material itself, because this is a raw, gritty material with fine porcelain that's been used. The motifs here can range from very traditional to the very whimsical stars and some hearts. They look functional, but the lids don't open. She has an interesting take on handles. And so I just think with her work, if you see them from afar, they look like they could belong from a decorative era from another time. But there's so much more going on with her work, from material to the way she explores what she wants to say, including adding these cracks, because she's responding to the building that is slowly decomposing. It's very thought through.
Verena, we have a question, sorry, about the wax flowers in terms of the temperature. Do they need to be kept in a temperature control environment?
Absolutely not, but I wouldn't put them on a windowsill with the sunlight coming right through. But definitely, if we look back in the time of where the museums use them, is the exact same technique. So nothing's going to happen to them. They're quite happy. They're actually quite strong. But I would definitely not put them in direct sunlight. Otherwise, they're very, very happy to continue to live forever. As you would see in museums, they just continue to live, so, and keep the freshness, like frozen in time.
Thank you.
We want to show you our last artist that we're showing here today. This is Anne Butler. Anne Butler lives in Belfast. She works with Parian and porcelain. Her work's quite interesting because she tends to do vessels, but we're focusing on her sculptural pieces today. This series is called The Contain. And if I could ask you to zoom in, you will see little world in there, a tiny world that exists right through her. Yeah, right there. That's it.
If you keep still.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That's it. So her work is
amazing.
about construction and deconstruction. Both of these pieces, the Contain as well as Inflect, which is this piece that she has constructed and let the folds come. None of these folds are accidental. They're all very well thought through. It's a long process of getting in and out of the kiln. As you can see, the squares that she's created still hold shape. And because the squares have the whole shape, but the structure itself has gently collapsed, they create this fluid movement. The sculptures look like they're moving. They look like they're silk if the light hits it right. She's very interested in studying her material in the raw format as well as she fires them. So with Anne's work, it's a lot of study of the material itself. We do get a lot of ceramists asking me how Anne does her work, which is always interesting because I think if you can't crack it, that's always a good thing.
In terms of the, sorry, can we go back to the one that has the squares? You say that, yes, you say that the squares hold, but are the lines drawn on the material, or I'm not quite sure I understand.
They are done before it goes into the kiln. So the lines are included into the structure even before. So she is slightly controlled, but not controlled in one way in terms of how the folds will come, but the squares are pre-decided before they go into. So it's very fine.
And
is
it the blue and white? Are the lines blue to recall the traditional blue and white of the porcelain and china, or are they black?
I think she worked a lot with Cinetaupe, the quality of that with other contain as well, and she has a series that where she studied the sunlight, and the cubes. So there is definitely a connection with working with a strong natural blue.
Right. Okay. And how I have a question here from one of the guests. The base is part of the piece?
This one is, yes. We have other pieces they're not, but this one, they are definitely part of the piece. They're very light. The porcelain on top, the Parian is heavy, but they are meant to sit on the plinth, the marble plinth made out of Parian clay. Porcelain.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you very much, Varuna. That was really interesting. Really good start to our tour. So we'll now move on to
Thank you
Oxford
so much.
Ceramics. So Peter walks slowly through Oxford Ceramics and Oxford Ceramics. And there's two directors of Oxford Ceramics, James and Rachel. And they will now, Rachel is going to be doing the talking. So this is Rachel, Oxford Ceramics.
Hi. Welcome everyone.
Hi, Rachel.
Can you hear me? Is that okay?
Absolutely. We can hear you very well. We can see you. It's fantastic. And that sun makes us happy because we saw a version of it at Dovecot Studio when we did our tour during Collect Art Fair.
Yeah, we were chatting, weren't we, Isabel? And I said, if you're ever in Edinburgh, you must go to the Dovecot Studios because it is an amazing place. So yeah, just on that. So we're Oxford Ceramics Gallery. We specialise in ceramics, both historic and contemporary makers. So we also go into other areas, different mediums. So the first object I was going to show you is the Dovecot Rug. It's an artist, a photography artist, Gary Fabian Miller, who has collaborated with the Dovecot Studios, one of the tufters there, to sort of reproduce his work. So his photography has come to a really important sort of changing point where the materials he normally works with are no longer being produced. So he's having to think of different ways to work with his photographs and his sort of archive. And this is an example of one of the pieces. So he's done a couple with Dovecot Studios. And obviously there's a sort of clear theme of light in this piece. And he works over time with the tufters, choosing the colours. This is wool, the material they've used here. Yeah, and it's quite a striking piece. It sort of draws people in. You won't get the full sense on the video, which is why we brought it out into Chelsea, because it just really grabs you and draws you in. So yeah, so that's the first piece I wanted to show you here.
Is it? Can I just ask you a question?
Yeah,
is it woven on the vertical like that?
Is it woven on the vertical? It's what do you mean? It's it's woven.
When
yes.
when it's on the
when it's on the loom.
Yes.
It's tufted, so they work sort of from left to right.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question? Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, I used the wrong word. Woven is not the word, but it's when it's on the loom, it's on the vertical.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. You can. There's some images on our website, but also on the Dovecot website, they've got lots of images of the sort of process of making these sorts of large textiles. So they also work on tapestries. So they've got a number of weavers and tufters who sort of have trained at Dovecot over time. And then, yeah, we're moving over here. Sorry, yeah, and then they produce these pieces. anyway, so, and they work with artists as well. They do collaboration a lot. So the next pieces I wanted to show you were these porcelain vessels. They're by a maker called Bodil. She's Danish. She lives just outside Copenhagen. Bodil and her husband Richard developed a technique of slip casting, which is extremely fine, and they're almost like eggshells. So she slip casts the cylinders and then fires them, and then she uses these overlays, transfers on them to create the sort of patterns. And the translucent nature of the porcelain means that she's working with patterns on the interior that will then show through to the exterior. Not that easy to see here because we haven't got the light. She had a light sort of shining in the top of it. So there's the shapes inside. But yeah, so she's sort of playing with the translucency of the material. They're extremely light.
One of my favorite artists in ceramic, I have to say. I think her work is stunning.
She's phenomenal. Yeah, she's won many awards. She was shortlisted. Yeah, there's two more here. She was shortlisted for the Loewe Craft Prize this year, and we've been working with her for quite a while.
It almost looks like stitching.
Yes, absolutely. These are really beautiful. I love the graphic quality of these two small ones.
Mm-hmm. Gorgeous.
So yeah, so Bodil kind of represents the sort of international side of our gallery. We work with quite a few Danish makers, and also moving on to our next artist here, Maida Masahiro. He's Tokyo based, so another international artist that we work with. We're quite interested in the influence of Japan and the makers over there. This artist fires multiple times. He starts with a black sort of porcelain, and he works in a very similar way to Bodil, actually, the porcelain vessels. He's layering strips of overglaze and firing each layer, and it produces almost a textile quality on the surface of his ceramic. And this is silver, so he's done a different number of layers of silver on each of these patches to create the overall pattern. He also works with, I haven't got a piece here, but he also works with some bright reds and things as well. So you get some quite bold pieces from him as well.
How many firings on a piece like that?
Up to 8 it is. So quite a few.
Mm-hmm. And you said this is silver? These are strips of silver?
Well, silver glaze. Not actually silver, I don't think. Yeah. So yeah. He often uses gold and red, and then we've had some blue pieces. If I lift the lid off of here, the interior of this one is blue. There's sweeties in there as well, sorry.
So pretty.
Water jar this is, though. It's a Mrs. Bashi, so it's a water jar for the tea ceremony. You'll see inside the box as well. There's probably something in here as well.
It looks like it's almost waxed.
Yeah, he produces it sometimes a bit like a lacquered effect. So yes, that's Maida Masahiro. We have a Japan season coming up later this month at the gallery. So we'll be bringing a group of Japanese artists together. So next piece is over
I have
here.
a question, Rachel.
Oh, go on. Yes, please do.
There's a question from a guest. How does he get the texture on the inside of the box?
That is a very good question. Let's have a look. Sorry, I've just swiped this away. I think it's in a very similar way, isn't it? This almost looks, this is very shiny. It almost feels like textile. I think it's just the glaze.
It's calico.
calico, what, he's layered it inside?
He pushed it onto calico
Yeah.
to pick up that calico.
When he's made the slab. There we go. Thank you, Peter.
So sorry, we couldn't quite hear Peter.
So sorry. So what he's done is when he's sort of made the slab of clay for the base of the pot, correct me if I'm wrong, he's pushed calico into it to create the texture, and then later, once he's built the piece and then glazed it, it's got that sort of black overglaze to it, but it still has the texture from the calico. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's probably that's what it looks like. Yeah. I'm sure Peter is right because he's the expert here.
Yeah, I was going to say you always need a maker at hand, because I don't make ceramics, but yeah, I only have so much knowledge. So moving on, anyway, so we've got another Japanese piece I just quickly wanted to talk about, and this is to sort of show you our historic side. So we're really interested in sort of delving back into the past of ceramics and seeing how that's kind of feeding into today. The contemporary makers, and this is a really lovely piece with a persimmon glaze, isn't it, James? By Shoji Hamada. Yeah, he's used wax for this to create the pattern, and then the really gorgeous persimmon glaze. They're quite thick. I'll turn it over as well. Let's just come quick to the base. I'll do that on Shoji pieces. Yeah. So, when do you think this might have been made, James? What era?
It's made in 1960 in Mashiko in Japan. So he was potting from the 20s through to the late 70s. But this is about 1960. If we can hear.
Can you all hear James?
Yes, we could hear that.
Me.
Thank you.
So there you go. So 1960s.
Yeah, around about 1960.
Yeah.
Piece. Yeah, I mean, he was good friends, long friends with Bernard Leach, the famous potter in St Ives, and Bernard got him to come over and help set up the St Ives pottery. So he's important sort of, I guess, part of the whole, the Mingdai tradition, as well as helped Bernard set up the Leach pottery.
Yeah, he influenced on British ceramics.
Yeah, big influence on British ceramic scene. So great to show his work, isn't it? So
yeah, absolutely important part of what we do. So do you want James to wave? I wasn't planning on bringing James in, but we need to. So James is my partner. I don't know if everyone knew that. So we're both directors of Oxford Ceramics. Yeah. So and the final object that I wanted to sort of draw you to is this really lovely bench. It is made by Jim Partridge and Liz Walmsley. They're a Shropshire-based duo working with solid oak, and then they scorch the oak and sort of polish it back, bringing out the natural grain of the oak. It's quite dramatic on some pieces, and this piece is called Restless. So they've created 3 areas sort of for seats, and it's intended really to be used as sort of a viewing position, really, which is why it's in front of the rug on our stand at the moment.
Could we have a look at the pieces standing at the back on the right? I think is it Rupert Spiro? Is it?
Yeah. Yeah. These vases have created quite a stir whilst we've been in Chelsea this week. So yeah, you're right. They are a group of vases by Rupert Spiro. He's not making anymore because he's working, he's writing and talking a lot at the moment, traveling. But these are works from him. They have a white titanium glaze, and he takes poetry and applies it to the surface of the ceramic, each letter. And pieces just moving around there.
And isn't there a message in the circularity too?
Say that again, sorry.
Isn't there, I thought there was some symbolism in the circularity and how he writes the poem around the cylinder. I thought there was a link to, there was a message there, no?
Probably. I'm not sure. He's worked quite a lot with text upon objects. I've never really.
Poetry from Rumi.
Yes, poetry from Rumi, and also who was the other? Catherine Rayner. Yeah.
I think it's a spectacular piece. It's really wonderful.
They are amazing. Yeah, absolutely. He also worked on scratching in letters into the glazed surface. So he's kind of done this embossed lettering as well as sort of handwritten scratching in of text on other pieces, which I don't have any of here today, but they're really beautiful objects.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Hey, thank you very much, Rachel and James.
Thank you.
It was really nice to get the insight into the work. Waving
Thank
goodbye.
you. Thanks very much.
Thank you as well. Thanks, everyone.
I think what's been really good this fair is that each gallery has its own distinct voice, and you've got a very different personality visible in each gallery and a very different approach to work and to collecting. We're passing by Katie Jones now, who's specialist in Japanese contemporary work, wonderful lacquer and ceramics and metal. Next gallery I walk past is Steve's Gallery. It's a very contemporary gallery of design, but also a lot of makers showing furniture, ceramics, and lighting, and an amazing mirror on the wall, which is sort of retake of Venetian mirrors. Passing Jagged Art, who was one of, all of you probably have talked to her at different times,
Yes.
Andrea. And now we're coming to Seeds Gallery, which is the next gallery we're going to visit. Sorry, no, Cube Gallery. Sorry.
Cube Gallery, yes.
We're going to visit. There's the two pieces on the outside, and then we're turning the corner, and we're going to say hello to Lawrence, who's the director of Cube Gallery. Thank you, Lawrence.
I'm just trying to unmute.
Yes, unmute as we tap, and you should have to speak. That should be okay. Can you hear Lawrence?
Hello?
Can you hear Lawrence?
Not yet, no.
Okay, but he can take my phone. He can talk into my phone. So that would be. Oh, it's not happening. Yes.
It seems to be.
Hang on.
Well, he's not. He
on.
has not logged on the call.
You haven't logged on, she says. So you need to. Oh, there now. You're logged on. Is he logged on now? Have you got him?
I have.
Yeah.
I thought I was all set up.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
Here we go.
About it. You're there now. Have you got him? Can you hear him?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Okay, you can hear now.
Good.
Wait, we're off.
No. We can't hear him, Brian. Sorry, ladies.
Paul, can mine?
How are we going to fix
Okay.
it?
Oh, fine. Sorry, you can't do that either. Okay, this often happens. So what? So here, let's unmute.
I'm able to unmute.
Can you? I've switched my phone on, Isabel.
Yes.
Can you hear Lauren speaking?
Yeah, hello.
Yes, I can hear you, Peter.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's go with that then, shall we? So here we are, finally, with Cube Gallery, where let me take this off as well. I've got an echo. Okay, so a Cube Gallery, we're set up in 2002 in Bristol, which is about 120 miles away from London. And we were there for 10 years, selling a range of ceramics,
You now have to follow me. So.
Yes, I'll follow you around. We were there 10 years in Bristol, and then we started doing art fairs, and then found that we have more clients in London than we did in Bristol, so we made the move up to London. And we've been here for just over 10 years now in Marylebone, which is central London. So that's a little bit about the gallery. I think we're going to do this one first.
Yeah, okay.
So what you're looking at now is Daniel Murcheff's work. He's a wood. Can you see that? Just pull back a bit and you can see the whole thing. Yeah. So he's a wood carver from Sofia in Bulgaria. And he makes his own plywood. So he gets his strips of birch, glues them together, clamps them, and then he's left with a big chunk of plywood, which is in this case 2 meters long and 8 inches thick. And he just sculpts into it, you know, using the old-fashioned methods. He's used rasps and files, and then sands it in the end. If you come close, you can. This has got a very nice silky feel to it, and so what we end up with is a very nice flow to the work. As I say, it is a big piece in American money. That would be what, 6'6", would it be? 2 meters, something like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he does some other works as well, where he uses the plywood across the grain. Would you like to see that one on the outside, or are you just going to stick
direct me, because
okay,
I have to follow you now.
Sure. Okay. Well, if you just come to the outside of the booth, you'll see this piece here. And instead of the grain of the plywood running this way, it runs this way. And so when he sculpts into it, you get the nice contour lines as if it was like a map. And so this is called The Other Side of the Moon. And it's a kind of an abstract piece of what he thought perhaps the other side of the moon could look like. I don't know if there's any questions on that. We've been looking mainly at, I see on the call that you've been mainly looking at ceramics. This is wood, which is a different animal altogether, but we think it fits very well in this graph.
I have a question. So is he creating the layers and then sculpting into it?
No, the layers are already there with the plywood, and he sculpts into the plywood, and the differences between the different layers then show when he sculpts into it.
Right. It is a spectacular piece.
Yeah, if you can look from the side there, you get a sense of the depth of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But okay. he builds the plywood himself, correct?
He does, yes. Commercial plywood comes maybe an inch thick at the very most, whereas he has to build it. It's 8 inches thick, and that's quite a process in itself. But being a member of the Wood Carvers Society in Bulgaria, that's the kind of thing that they do over there. And they pride themselves on using very traditional methods. So there's no laser cutting, there's no power tools and that sort of thing. It's all done by hand.
It's beautiful.
Okay. Let's go back in, and should we go over to my young Nam Ann's work now? Okay. Yeah. So here we've got a display of my young Nam Ann's work. There, she calls it her eye series, and it's a display of very, very different pieces, all tied in together with the eyes that she has on each piece. Some are glazed, others are coloured, but that's the feature that ties it all together. These are made of porcelain. So it's bisfired, then it's glazed, and then she does a final glaze of gold. That's actually a glaze there, and that's fired at a lower temperature than the colored glaze, so that doesn't affect. So it actually goes in the kiln 3 times.
And what was the inspiration for creating this collection of eyes?
Well, that's quite funny. Everyone seems to think that they look like marine coral or anemones and that sort of thing, but her ideas are completely different to that. She just calls it her eye series, and she sees the reflection of you looking at yourself and then back again at the eye that's in the piece. And so each piece is handmade, but she might make 4 or 5 of these. Each when you put them side by side is slightly different. But when she's made those 4 or 5, that'll drop out of the collection, and then something else will come in. So, for example, we haven't seen this one before. These were all delivered to us from Miami last week. We haven't seen. You see.
And is she creating first a shape on which she glues the element, or she attaches the element? Is that how it's made?
Yes, yes. The underlying. Let me just show you. There's an underlying element here, and then and they're hung on the wall with a keyhole. Right.
And we can buy them by the unit, or are they sold as a series?
No, they're individually priced. So they run from the very biggest one here. That runs at £4,000, and then they're pro rata sized. They're pro rata sized down to the smallest. If you pull back, you can see the 2 sizes there. That's the very biggest that she does, and then that's down to the smallest one. That's priced at 300. So, as I say, my young Nama Anne, she went to Camberwell University here in London, first of all. She was in London for 12 years. And then 3 years ago, her husband had a transfer over to Miami. She followed him over there, had quite a difficult setup period over there because of the humidity of the atmosphere in Miami is very different from here. So she had some setup problems to get some continuity. Now she's set up, she's up and running, and her husband's coming back to the UK now. So she's got to up sticks and come back here and find a studio and go through the whole rigmarole again, which will probably cause a hiatus in her work. But yeah, so we're not going to see any new work from her until about October, I think. So that's my young man's work.
But it looks like you've got a nice inventory there.
Yes, yes, yeah, indeed. There's a nice variety of sizes as well as heights, because if you can look, so it's not only sizes, you can see that they stand different heights off the wall. So
right,
yeah, they're all flat based as well, so they can be placed on a shelf or a windowsill, not necessarily on the wall at all. Okay. And I think we'll have a look at Peter Monahan's work now. Okay, so we're looking at Peter Monahan's work now. He's an Irish artist from Dublin. He's had a long career as a graphic designer. And then in 2000, he retired from that, took early retirement and just lent himself to artworks. He likes the 3D artworks, but in a frame. So he hand colored in this particular piece. He hand on either side and then placed vertically in slots that are machined into the backing. And so what you get, if you pull back, you can see that you get a pincushion effect from the piece straight on. But then from the left and right, you get a very big color change.
Lawrence, you broke up a little bit. What is the material?
Okay, that's colored card. It's hand-colored card that he uses.
Okay, thank you. It's a little difficult on the video to see the full effect because of the stripes.
Yeah.
But we get the sense of the volume. I'd love to see work by Tony Blackmore.
Okay, let's go and have a look on the outside.
Thank you. I know it's going to be a little difficult to see again because it's paper and it's folding, but it is such extraordinary work, I think. I'd love to see it.
Okay, so here's Tony Blackmore's work. it's very, we weren't provided with lights on the outside of the stands, but
It shows up really well.
it does show up well, does it? Oh, excellent. Oh yeah, excellent. Okay, so that's he uses hand folded mylar, which is a polyester film. It's very stable, and architects use it for archival purposes because it doesn't yellow or fade. So what he does, he works with a Fibonacci series of numbers, which if you know that.
Shall I pull back?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, can you pull back a bit so we can, here we go. Yes.
Yeah, so the Fibonacci series of numbers. Oh yeah, that looks really good. Yeah, so
I'll let you through.
okay. Oh, they're not going through. Okay, so yeah, the Fibonacci series of numbers, that's the two preceding numbers in the series are added together to make the third number. So it goes 1, 1, 2, 1 and 2, 3, 3 and 1 and 5, 3 and 2 is 5, and that so it adds up like that. And that's how he gets his increasing size of pattern. And
yeah, it's a little difficult to see on video,
yeah.
but we will send photos, and because it's really remarkable work.
Yeah, so these are all hand, as I say, they're all hand folded and pushed through, and you get a lovely sheen on the pieces, on the facets that that actually face the light. And we thought we had that quite well here, but obviously not. So
the camera can't focus actually.
Ah, okay.
The camera doesn't know what it's looking at.
Yeah, it's got a layer of glass as well, so,
yeah,
and the reflections.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, did you have other artists to show us?
You can have a look at. Yeah, so this is Yoo Kim's work. He's a Korean artist. He lives in the UK. He's in Cardiff in Wales, and these pieces here are very meticulously made. He did his PhD at Cardiff on the chemical makeup of the different coloured porcelains. So as you guys might know, that a dark coloured porcelain will shrink at a different rate than a lighter one. So he's had to manipulate the chemical compound or chemical makeup of each one so that when he builds a pot, they all shrink at the same rate. And that's a very technically accomplished feat. And so there's this pattern here, then he's got the stepped pattern there. And as I say, if it was purely porcelain without any manipulation at all, this color would shrink at a lesser rate than this one would, and so that the pot would completely crack and disintegrate in the kiln. He's come up with a way of making sure that everything shrinks at exactly the same rate, and there's no cracks, and there's it's a very homogeneous piece. So we're very proud to have his work here. He does a lot of talks and tours about his work.
And Lawrence, each element of that vessel is made by hand. It's not a mold.
Yes, when you say it's a mold, it's pressed out of a there's what do you call it?
Of a form.
A form,
of a
yeah.
Form, yes. Okay.
Oh, extruded.
Extruded, yes. But each color is extruded, having had a different chemical makeup to it. Then it's built.
So it's a bit like a giant piping machine.
Yes.
So you have a piping tip that is square or rectangular, and you kind of force it through that hole, and it forms a rectangular line of clay.
That's right. Then you cut that up, and then you build your vessel from that. Okay. So Did you want to talk about this one here? This one over here. This is This is by Kim Yoo-jing again, but this is a throne pot where he plays with the lines here. These are actual painted lines on here, and he's got ridges then formed into the clay, and so it's a trick of the eye that it looks as if it's painted on a flat surface, where in actual fact it's ridged. And if you come down, there's hints of red there in the vessel, but as you go up, the reds disappear because the ridges hide the color.
Yes, we can see very well.
Yeah, so
it's incredible work.
Yeah, it's very, very precise. He didn't want this to be a functional pot, so that's why he's got a permanent lid that's on it.
And maybe we can finish on the mushroom-like piece that's on the ledge.
Okay. Sure. Okay. I wasn't going to do this one, but this is Mark Schrijvers. She is a Belgian artist living in rural France, and she builds a form internally, and then has these mushrooms that she puts on a very small wheel and throws, and then builds up the form. It just makes a very satisfying object. People seem to really respond well to these. I don't know what it is about mushrooms, but people seem to really like them. Of course, the difficult thing is having it perfectly formed so that when it goes in, it doesn't split, because there's obviously lots of joints there, as you can see. And to have that fired without any problems at all, any cracks, is a very difficult thing to do. There's a much larger version here. Again, she uses raw porcelain, and she doesn't glaze any of her work nowadays. It used to be glazed, but we think it looks better in the unglazed. So she likes to leave her fingerprints in the mushroom shape that she produces, and she leaves it kind of. Okay then.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. So
thank you so much, Lawrence. It's really fabulous. Thank you. What a gallery, and I have the catalog, so I will share it with everybody in the audience.
Okay. All right, guys. Thank you, and speak to you next.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. I mean, I think it's really fascinating how kind of Lawrence is attracted to sort of very engineered work, and that there's an engineering element to all of the pieces. So it makes it a very different experience from other galleries. Yeah.
Peter, can you mute yourself?
He has done that, so I think it might take a second. Are you off? You're not muted, Peter. Hello, is that better?
Yes, fantastic.
Yes, okay, that's better. No, there was an echo still happening. I just think, as I said earlier on, each gallery has its own distinct personality, and it's really interesting to hear you talk about the kind of engineering and structuring behind the work. So thank you very much, Lawrence. And now we're going back to next thing. We're going to Vessel Gallery. You'll see here. We're passing. We're going. Yes, it's Vessel we're passing. Who's really known for his glass work. We're now moving on past Kingsgate Collective, the Ceramics Collective. We're showing here for the first, everybody's showing here for the first time, because it's the first time I've seen them at the fair. And now we're going to meet Lloyd Choi Gallery. Lloyd is based both in Korea and in London. And she's going to now introduce you to some of her artist work.
Hello, Lloyd.
Yeah.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
How are you?
Great. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having us in your gallery. And I know that you have an interesting story, because you actually represent artists from Korea, and that you are both between Korea and England.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your artists.
Well, we have all Korean artists, and Actually, I was, you know, we're supposed to select 5 artists to talk about today. And somehow I happen to have 5 female artists. So that's what we're going to introduce. And so here I'm going to start with here. And it's by Park So-hee, very young, already still in her 20s. And she's got this amazing talent approaching ceramic in a very quite researcher in a way, because she's been working on celadon glaze, testing on a porcelain, because normally celadon is done on a stoneware, but she's doing on the porcelain and giving this elegant subtlety onto the shape. And so you can see where this has more of more of a green tone, and compare this blue tone. This is how much iron she's adding to it. So she's creating her own palettes. So she threw the foam on the wheel and gets the shape she likes, and then she custom, giving this all this excuse my English, polygonal shape. Then she applies the celadon glaze as much as she desires to, that she gets the different shade of selections. And so we're going to move on to the motherboard. So, and this is another female artist, of course, and then she's the actually metal artist, and she's trying to give color to the metal. So what she's trying to do is bringing this natural color into the metal and bringing mother of pearl, applying on the metal, which is nickel you are looking at now. What's exciting about this 2 ball like you show, we're looking at here, one is the blue, Peter's showing, and next one you can see the white. Surprising is that exactly the same material. I mean, same white mother of pearl on nickel, but why those colors different? I'm asking you. you can use your
I don't know.
Well, yes,
The
it makes you. It's kind of like makes us to think. How come? And when we look at the answer, is the interior. The interior now, the blue one has the dark interior, which is applied with natural lacquer, which means the outer of the ball also applied the natural lacquer, transferring into the white transparency mother of pearl, and creating this blue ocean blue. So that's what's happening. So how she smartly understanding material and creating these amazing artworks. And what she's trying to do is she's cutting up the shell, mother of pearl, and bring over to the metal. When she actually applying them is she starts with stripes of mother of pearl, and using the tool somewhere here. Try not to look at my phone. Somewhere starting point, and then using a tool and creating this mosaic shape as she goes along, applying those stripes of mother of pearl and layers and lines and stripes. You can see how she's been applying. Really, there is no gap at all between the stripes. So I'm just going to.
Yeah, it's incredible because mother of pearl is. So how does she apply? I'm assuming that once she has applied the mother of pearl,
yes,
there's no more firing or anything like that. How are the two material adhere to each other?
Well, first of all, it's about creating this spear shape. It was the flat material, and she's using the turning and skill, and also the hammering to get this spear shape. Then you can see inside is joined in the middle by soldering, silver soldering. Then she applies on the metal outer natural lacquer, which is the sap from the tree, to get ready to have the stickiness for mother of pearl to get applied. And also another material she used to get finely applied ball of sticky property has. Then she polished them, but not in a perfect way. She's still leaving some texture that you can see. So she just give light polish enough to, it has the natural glow, but has the, you can still see the texture of the mother of pearl.
Yes, it's beautiful.
Yes. And then we're moving on to the third artist, who is Cheboram. And she's creating this stoneware pot using her, she creates this small, more like patches works. And then you can see her finger marks, how she created and making, trying to join them all together, hand built. Then she draws lines, each blue lines using fine brush. And you can actually see this, each patch piece has been jointed by the blue lines. She's trying to get, where you finish the line here and it continues to the next line, to the next pieces, keep on continuing. So in the end, the whole patches are connecting to each other by these lines. And surprisingly, she unglazed the piece, so you can actually see the texture and the rawness of the material. If it was glazed and fired, it would look much different. You wouldn't get to see these textures. You can now actually work it out, how she's been pinching and pressing to leave her finger marks around it, and a beautiful her signature as well. And the inside, she just been really went contrast to the outer, which was more delicate work and detailed. The inner is just mixing her cobalts and shaking the balls and just letting it drip down itself and creating dark interior.
That's almost, so it's very primitive. The inside looks quite primitive.
Yes, yes. So quite a contrast from outside, how delicately she's done. She changes her brush like dozens to get these fine lines, keep on continuing. And then we're moving on to the textile work, which is just placed next. So this is all hand sewn. We call it jogakbo, the patchwork in Korea. And in all the time, I'm sure it's not only in our culture, in every culture, the patchwork is a part of, our everyday thing, because making the fabric itself is such a hard work. I'm sure in all time, do not waste any leftover. So the artist trying to repeat the concept from all the time. So she's been collecting these style-based rami fabrics from the shops where they create traditional clothing. And so we're going to, moving on to the large piece, how much she can just keep on doing actually. And so each piece, you can see, they are all hemmed. She finished each piece, hemmed each piece. So they are all working on their own. And then she putting on layers of each other, top overlapping each other. So that's how she joins them. So we're looking at whether they are meeting 1, 2, 3 pieces into small square, all joined up, hand sewn. So this is the works that she cannot do needlework in the wintertime. Why? Because rami is stiff already. Then she applied this natural lacquer. That's why you are seeing this color is more deepened hue, and also making stiff, more even stiffer, to able to sew by hand, which she's doing here amazingly. And so whenever she changes her thread, she washes her hands to keep it neat and clean. So looking at these big size, this is 190 centimeter by 130 centimeters, roughly. This is the work of 6 months. I'm sure, she's just been spending hours and really having her own, conversation with the material. And then we thought we normally place this against the wall, but we happen to have between the middle of the room, and it's just creating this transparent effect, and which is, I think, it's just giving another, another role for the artworks can do for the environment and the space we're living in. And I will finish with the last.
Is there an inspiration? I mean, to me, it looks almost like agricultural fields seen from, from the sky, and it's
almost like you mean like kind of like pattern for Egyptian, and you mean those kind of feeling.
That's right. Yes.
Yes, I can see. I understand. It's interesting. She's really not inspired by anything, but the concept of collecting and making work out of that not needed pieces, and dedicating the labor of the the needlework of this is motherhood and womanhood. And this is just what she's doing simply, but what she's doing something unusual. I never seen before myself, and also the history of Korea, the color, and that she applied natural lacquer on each fabric. Each pieces have its own. It already had its own color, which was bright, and by applying this natural lacquer, it just creates different palettes that never seen before. And I don't think no one ever actually would try to attempt this, because it's such a hard way to do it, and also by sewing it. And someone actually came and said it really reminds them of modernist artist Paul Klee, the German artist.
Yeah.
And it just, and someone says a stainless glass, and it's just amazing what people see in this.
We've lost you. We've lost Lloyd's sound. I don't know if Peter can, or Brian can hear me.
Sorry, I can hear you. So Lloyd is trying to go back on.
Okay.
Wi-Fi might have dropped. Might need to reconnect again, Lloyd. Go up here. People switch his sound on, and you can actually talk to Peter.
Can I do that? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. And so, yes, I mean, so this is a piece I would consider selfless, because the artist almost like, giving a room for people to think and, enjoy the way they want to interpret. I think this is we should consider as a selfless artworks, and then really giving audience to use the imagination, which I really respect to the artist. And also another reason why she doesn't sign on her artwork, not to interfere on its own, the artworks. So yeah, and then we're going to go to the last artist, which is the wall hanging. Oh, she's really she's a discovery. She's discovery because she's the artist, a wife of another ceramic artist, and I happened to see her when I was visiting her husband. And she's an artist, and then she's been teaching art. She's been an art teacher at primary school, and so her inspiration is the innocence of the children, and she's starting to creating her own work from only last year and launched her pieces. So she creates this stoneware canvas. So you can see how it's been all, what would I say, hand touched the shape, which is not perfect square, but almost like just piece of, what should I say?
Irregular.
Irregular, yes, thank you. I think people talk too much. And then she paints on that stoneware canvas with her raw pigment. Then she applies a thin layer of white slip. Then she scratches off the white slip, revealing her subject, her paints.
What size are they?
Good question.
I'm 6'2", so I have large hands. That gives you a rough idea.
Yes, I'm not. I should look at it.
Over A3.
You're welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, and then where was I? So yeah, this piece is inspired by Minhwa. Min is people's paint, which was widely been celebrated in 19th century, because until that time, Korea's painting, it was all landscape, and it was the elite's practice of painting something to do with Confucius, symbolic subject like bamboo and things. But it was 19th century for the first time was that from the 16th to 19th century was when flourished with people's art and painting and subset of just everyday things like flower, peonies we're looking at. And I think this is really smart touch by the artist. She's adding this contemporary object, which is perfume bottle. So she's trying to bring that the people's art, that the innocent about that subject and how they approach in the pure happiness and to share. And this is what she's trying to do here. Yes, and then almost forgot one last artist here. We're looking at the slab of porcelain. It's really conceptual artist, Park Hae-young. This is really large piece, almost 1 meter by, should be like written down on the side. This is almost
glazed porcelain
by 70. Large piece. It's a slab, and which is done on porcelain, and she sprayed cobalt and iron oxide, and she placed it outside in the raining, so she can capture this rain existence, because rain only exists when it drops on the ground and makes sounds. The artwork's title called "Sing the Sounds of Rain," because sounds is when the rain hit the ground, and then it's the only sign we get acknowledged about the rain and existence. And the artist trying to for audience to see the rain's existence, short life, and it still has their voice in made, because the artist herself is a quiet person, and she's been brought up as a traditional way and not to make her voice loud, and for her celebrating the rain's voice and existence is meaningful. And so she's trying to bring the conceptual art into the visual. So what we are looking at is where it's been raining, we can see it's been clearly storming around and moved, and her job is carefully moving, not to make any changes, and firing and bringing out, preserving, recording how it was. So
you stand there,
and you can
people could see the size. Yes.
So that's how big it is and how small it is. Okay, it's as small as my head. And yes, and again, I mean, interesting, because again, I consider Park Hae-young's work, I mean, she says herself only a collaborator to the rain. Again, this is selfless. This is what I find fascinating with the Korean artists, especially with women and the female artists who keep on searching that subject, inspiration from the nature, from the kids, the pure form itself, and not to try to get involved in a way, but they think that their job is really transporting to the artwork, so letting audience to feel the purity of the subject.
It's a wonderful philosophy. Thank you so very much.
Listen to what the audience are thinking and any questions.
There are no questions, but I have to say that it's wonderful to understand a little bit more the Korean artistic philosophy and approach. That direct connection is very important. Thank you so very much, Lloyd. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you for your patience.
Brian, I think we have one more. And Brian, I think that you are on mute. No?
Sorry. There's too many things going on. Hi, we're now going to see Cynthia.
No.
Yeah.
Hello.
So,
Have you
Cynthia.
unmuted?
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to the Cynthia Corbett Gallery.
Here we go. Yes. Hello.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
And hello to all of you in Canada. I wish I was able to be with you, but I'm with you, at least virtually. I'm Cynthia from the Cynthia Corbett Gallery, and I'm going to be talking about a few of the artists that we are presenting.
You different see as everybody else. Really nice. Really.
Is that okay? Can they hear me? Can they hear me? Okay. Because
yes,
I can hear.
you.
I'm hearing Brian as well.
No.
Okay.
I just muted Brian.
Okay. So nice to meet you. The first artist we're going to start with is Matt Smith. And Matt Smith is a British artist, currently actually based in Ireland. And Matt does both ceramic art and textile embroideries. But Matt is also a professor, an art historian, and a curator. His work is just fabulous. He is and very vocal about it. He's a queer artist who looks at art history in a very serious way and unpicks it and unpacks it and appropriates it and finds beauty both in the subject narratives and in the actual physical pieces. So what we have here is we have a curation of a series of his both ceramic and tapestry works, and the Black Parian ceramics here. I'd love you to approach the lady so you can see very up close what the work is. So it's basically what Matt has been doing is he had the ability to go to Stoke-on-Trent and the Spode factory, and he was able to appropriate and use some of the molds, and then with the molds and with his kilns making Black Parian, and then using found objects, he's created this incredible series. And this one is called Red Girl with Pearls, and those are freshwater pearls. And all his work is it's like art history based and materiality based, but both on a technical basis with being a ceramicist and an art historian. So it's actually twofold. With these pieces that you're seeing here, it started with his residency that he received from the V&A here in London after he won the Young Masters Art Prize, which I'm also a founder of. He won that prize in 2014, and then had a residency at the V&A, and started to create the Black Parian pieces. Last collect in 2020, we debuted Matt's tapestry pieces, and he was then.
Cynthia,
yes.
Can I just ask you, sorry, before we go to the tapestry, we went to the digitally, obviously, to the studio of Andrea Salvatori, and we saw these figurines with the women with the pot on the head. It's remarkably similar to what I'm looking at here. What can you elaborate on that?
I don't know actually the work of Alberto Salvatore, but in the case of Matt's work with the ladies are actually anonymous to him, and he's using the figurines, if you will, as a metaphor to sort of what was in art history celebrated, and a lot of it was not women. A lot of it was men that were famous and usually white. So he's kind of turning that on its head, is saying that these women are anonymous, but they're really beautiful, and they're going to be on a pedestal, and that's why they're created in this way. I don't know the references to Salvatore, but I think
yeah, it's Andrea Salvatore's,
yeah, and in case with because also when Matt's also commenting, because he's an art historian and curator, he's commenting a lot on what museums collect and what is in museums and who's kind of in a way who's excluded from those museums. And a lot of that is women, people of different backgrounds, different races, different gender, and basically sexual orientation. And so he kind of plays on that, and he plays on that in a really beautiful way. So I don't know if that answers that question.
Yeah,
but,
thank you. It's just interesting to see such striking similarity.
Yeah, and the other thing is the white parian that we can also look at, the sconces. These are really gorgeous, and a lot of this stems from him getting actually being commissioned to go into National Trust properties and to again look at the history of those homes in a very innovative, in a very unusual way. So this one's called Spoils. This is the male and female candlesticks. This is the grand, if you look at these candlesticks, this is the grand tourist, and this is the grand tourist. And a lot of with the National Trust properties, because of his research, he finds all kinds of interesting things, like downstairs, upstairs, backgrounds, and finding out kind of the, if you will, unpicking of what you don't see. And that's the other part of it is with him. So we have a lot. We and that's one of the, and like if you look now, maybe I'll go to the tapestries, shall I? So if we look here at the tapestries, so what I was saying is last collect into 2020, for the first time, we presented his ceramics and tapestries together, and the V&A, who had already bought his ceramics, bought one of his tapestry pieces. But what he's doing here, he's taking vintage found embroideries that are basically done by anonymous women to celebrate famous male artists, and he's actually picking those works and then recreating them without the faces. So he's basically saying to the viewer, well, what do you think about these works? And this one is absolutely gorgeous. This is called After Fragonard, and of course it's the swing, which is in the Wallace collection. So there's a big connection to Britain. And then the one that we were looking at earlier, Peter, is the After Boucher, and he's using a lot of references to Anglo-Saxon materiality, and also Scandinavia, where he's been professor and located there at the university. But the unpicking is what's so interesting, and the time it takes. And he's trying to say, well, I want to honor in a way the women that put themselves at such, you know, pains of doing this for basically pennies, and I'm celebrating them, but we don't have their names, so I'm not actually making real faces there.
Can I
so
ask you, Cynthia, a question here? So on the ceramic, he is finding objects and molds, and he assembles them, and then on the tapestry, he's unpicking the work. So, I mean, what is his training? Is he a ceramicist? Does he do the cross stitching? What skills does he have?
I don't know what skills he doesn't have. I call him a Renaissance man. He yes, he's trained in ceramics, painting,
international economy, I think, as well.
Yeah, he was an international economist, and but as a young child, he started doing embroidery, and he was just fascinated by it. So you know, the little kits and then came to it when he became a practicing artist. He went back to that. So he's stitching all this himself. I mean, this piece after Boucher, I think he said it took him a year and a half to do. He won last year at 220 Collect. He won the inaugural Brookfields Properties Award, which is basically an acquisition and exhibition award, where Brookfield Properties acquired a number of his pieces for the Crafts Council, and it was fabulous because they then gave him a show in one of their buildings in the City of London, and had all these people seeing his you know, his ceramics and tapestry. So that was really great. And
so
I guess
he
now we
actually
should
did the so he actually did the stitching of this tapestry. I must have misunderstood. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank
yeah.
you.
He did. Yeah. Restitch it. So we'll move on. I think because we only have so much time, I guess, for your audience, we'll move on now to the amazing chandelier which you see before you. This is an artist. I mean, I think probably your audience is probably very familiar with Meissen. This is an artist named Chris Entenmann, and Chris is an American artist. She's based she's based in Oregon, but in 2010 we were showing her work in Chicago, and the CEO of Meissen saw her work and invited her to be an artist in residence at Meissen, and she has been working with Meissen in Germany since 2011. And you can see the cross stitch here. This is the very famous logo of Meissen, which has been in continuous production since 1710. And this piece is called the Lemon Chandelier, which she was, as an artist in residence, she was able to get into the archives. And the archives are I guess, as big as I don't know, I guess as a football field. I think that's the best way to put it. They're huge, and so she could see the molds, and then she could see the drawings. And so she recreated a chandelier from the 1800s that was done by Candler, which was the most famous designer in the history of Meissen. And it's her take on, you know, contemporary take on a traditional Meissen ceramic, and it's a little bit naughty, and it's obviously very, very, very beautiful. And each one of these pieces is done individually. The body of the chandelier is done in pieces, and then each of the arms is then attached to the piece, and even the lemons are all done in these beautiful figurines. Yeah, it's just incredible, and I just felt that it was important. We've all been in lockdown for so long. I just thought, let's show this beautiful piece, and let's see if it finds a new home. And then the naughty. Oh, and then there's another piece by her, which relates to the Fragonard, because this is also again Rococo Boucher-esque, and this is from, it's called The Pursuit of Love, and it's from the Fragonard series, because the drawings she found at Meissen. And this one's a little naughty. You can kind of see she, for the chandelier, she removed one of the little parts, but you can see the you see it there. And yeah, she's really absolutely extraordinary. And what was great, I've been able to visit Meissen so many times, because I'm actually the only gallerist, private gallerist, that they have allowed to show her work, because they're very, you can imagine they're very protective. And I was able to meet some of the painters that have been working at Meissen for years, and some of them, they can trace their lineage back to the original painters from the 18th century. So it's quite extraordinary to be able to show this beautiful work. How many more minutes do we have?
About 3, 4.
Okay, so this is an American artist based in Oregon, and we'll move to Clary Reese, who is also an American artist, and she is based in the West Coast as well. She is based in San Francisco, and Clary I met in 2005 because Clary had come to London to do her MFA at City and Guilds in painting. And this is these are two extraordinary pieces. The one above, I think, that Peter is filming now, this is called the thing. Okay, so the one up top is called the Exploding Hypo, and the one below it in the roundel on a board is a 30-piece hypo. And what Clary does and what her practice is she is inspired by science, and these are real petri dishes. So I can take this off. She's also inspired by Murano glass. So a lot of people do think that this is glass, but it's not. It's actually, I always get mixed up. Plexi, no, but what is it called? Plexi or plexiglass, or what do the Americans call it? But so it's plastic basically, not glass. And within the materiality that she's using, it's very, very interesting. She's inspired by science. She goes under the microscope and she really has looked at what the processes are, and then she uses her imagination. But what's so great about these, each one of these is done uniquely by her hand, and it's marrying, if you will, the most historical type of painting medium, because she's using pure pigments, and then the most kind of modern, because she's using a form of plastic called epoxy polymer, which is a resin. So and when she creates each one of these, sometimes there's randomness and sometimes it's very planned, but she kind of doesn't know until she starts. So it's really fascinating. So each one is going to be different, and then she puts them together and decides what configuration she is going to produce depending on how they sit together. And we have shown Clary just about everywhere you could imagine, and placed her work everywhere because it's quite universal. And particularly now, with, I think that because of the pandemic and the talking about science all the time, people are very interested in this, and we've had a lot of families that want this on their wall, and they're kind of talking to their children about science. And but it's really beautiful. And she's in a lot of hospitals. She's in big public organizations like Microsoft, Gentech, who I think was one of the Google, one of the researchers for one of the vaccines. She's here in London. We're very, very pleased because she's in the Great Ormond Street Hospital for Children. She's in the Nuffield Center for Autistic Children in Oxford. and she's
It's very joyful.
very positive, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, very joyful. Yeah, very, very positive for now. And, you know, it's called like medicine for your walls. But any questions? I think because I don't know how, if you have much more time. Do you have any
well,
questions?
I think we're coming to the end of our tour, but one Edie, and who is one of our guests, has seen the work in person and says beautiful. She actually has a question. Is the piece on the round sold as one work on the disc?
Yes. So what we try to do for this presentation is that the work can go be fabricated and put directly into the wall, but we wanted to show that you could also make a board if you didn't want to put it directly into your wall. So yes, it's done in installations of 30 pieces, 60, or anything over that. And they can also be configured in an amorphic way, and they can be actually bespoke configured, but like that. So it depends on what space you have, but she doesn't sell them individually because they're actually a piece, if that makes sense.
Thank you so much. Thank you so very much, Cynthia. It's a great pleasure to see the work of your artist.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you to Peter and Brian.
Thank you. And that was a great end to that view of 5 galleries. I think we've traveled quite a way around the world at this stage. We've been to Korea, America, UK, and Europe through the series of works. So I just want to kind of say goodbye to everybody and thank you for your time. And thank you
Brian,
for visiting us in Artefact. And hopefully Artefact will be happening again next year. So it'll move slightly earlier to May and it'll coincide with London Craft Week. And it will be wonderful to welcome all of you in person to London.